want to seem too keen.
Yes, but at the same time, you want to seem to be keen enough.
Well, it's good to be keen. Good to seem keen.
Yeah, but cloying, limpet-like, probably not. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome to another one of my live streams. I'm very pleased to have in the virtual studio David Chernick, the man, the myth, the mystery, sales trainer and specialist du jour. My name is Gareth Wax with many purple hats. We often toss around topics to do with modern sales and how it can or can't be done better or worse. And today's topic is no exception. We're talking about when do you follow up and when do you chase? And the chase being you've left it for a while. How do you approach it? And should it be done and when should it be done? So, David, what are your thoughts?
So the question arose because very often, including in the last couple of days, I have a client who is worried about following up and chasing too soon and too much. And often the ones that do chase are chasing in the wrong way. I mean, they're literally just chasing. And nobody wants to be chased. And so, and people who are sensitive to these things realize that they don't want to be a chaser. They don't want to be that person that's just phone me. Have you decided yet? Have you decided yet? You know, what are you supposed to say every time a message? Well, no, what? Are we doing this? You know, and it's tiring for people to do that. And it's, you know, horrible to be on the receiving end of it. You end up just sort of ignoring people. And then the sales guy, you know, gets put off. And I see a lot of people running sales organizations where they've sent quotes and they're waiting. And they do a bit of chasing maybe. And they realize how the chasing comes off and it's horrible, you know, and then it just goes quiet. And, you know, and then I end up seeing the pipeline. And, you know, as people who watch this show regularly will know that my first question is, you know, whip out your pipe. Let's have a look. What's in the pipeline? There'll be loads of stuff in there often where they've sent quotes and they chased a bit and then they got, you know, either bored of chasing or self-conscious about chasing. So they left it and it's still in there. You know, sometimes months or even years later. And so it sort of begs the question, when do I follow up? How often do I chase? When do I chase? When do I stop chasing?
Yes. Do you take it out of your pipeline?
Yeah. So, it's a great question because it's what most people sort of face these sorts of problems. You've sent the quote, you sent the proposal, and you know, there's a few different answers to it. One of the questions that I'll ask at this point is, well, before you sent the quote, what was the expectation of the recipient of that quote?
The expectation is everything. Well, the expectation is everything. If it's just a fishing expedition where they're just asking for quotes just to test the waters and see how much this sort of service might cost them, then you can quite reasonably expect them never to want to call you again. It might be just gathering for a budgetary proposal for next year.
It could well be. It could well be. Now you speak here from experience.
Absolutely.
Experience. So, but there's a lot of people with experience that still face the same challenge. And so there is an easy answer. It's not necessarily easy to execute, but I just want to sort of sow that seed in everybody's minds as to how, you know, one of the best ways to overcome this problem. And it won't help the existing ones that you are chasing, but it will help the future ones. So I'm going to give
I know what this is going to be. Go on.
I know it's going to be. Right. So there's going to be two answers to this. It's going to be one answer to how to make sure that you don't have to chase in future. And there's going to be one answer that's, you know, if you have been chasing, you have sent a quote, what do you do now when it's all gone quiet? Okay. So what do you want to have first, Gareth?
Second one.
The second one. Okay. So you've you've sent the quote and you are in the throes of chasing. What do you do to chase? So the question that I was asked was when to follow up and when to chase. And my answer is always ASAP, like straight away. People are sort of worried about seeming overly keen. And, I don't think you can seem overly keen. I think these days it's perfectly acceptable to show people that you are really, really keen. People don't want to seem desperate. I mean, sometimes I'm really desperate for a piece of business, not because necessarily desperate for the money or desperate for just any old business, but I really want their business. I want them to.
But here's the problem. I suspect the first one will have covered this, but forgive me if I'm stealing your thunder. But if you have qualified it and characterized it correctly at the point at which the initial interaction took place, then you set your own expectations that they're going to be closing soon, and they ghost you or they don't really respond or whatever it is, then you're on a hiding to nothing. It's all about how you deal with them when you first interact.
All right, so we will come on to that, but we're addressing a situation where we haven't done that, where we have sent the quote and we are chasing. In fact, even when we have done that initial qualification, this still sometimes happens. But the first thing is the follow-up. And when do you follow up? And I would say follow up very, very quickly. In a quote or even an extensive proposal, we want to be confirming that the value that they were looking for, that during the sales process, hopefully we would have had a conversation about what's it worth to you, what will having this solution do for you, will it overcome that problem that you're trying to solve, will it help you achieve that goal that you're aiming for. And we want to just confirm that after we've sent that proposal or quote, that what we have sent answers the question. Because it's kind of that time when there will be some surprises. They won't necessarily have seen a quote from you before. So the layout, the format, the wording, that will all be a new thing for them. And I want to make sure that when they get it, that it's easy for them to understand, maybe talk them through the document. So I will try and do that. That is something you can organize in advance. I'm going to send you the quotes. Could we just schedule a 15-minute conversation for after I've sent it? So we can just go through it very, very quickly and it can just explain the different components.
Actually fundamental to the way in which I work. Whenever I have my initial meeting with anyone, I say, so my diary gets very congested. Here's my booking ink. Book it right now while we're on the call so that we can have that 15-minute follow-up just to talk about your reactions once you've had a week to consider.
Yep. So there is that. Now that's the follow-up. When you don't hear back, how often do you chase? Now, there's a few different schools of thought here. I learned this from lead generation. There's a guy called Adam Baitu. I know that he's seen some of these shows, so he might be on. But he will say for lead generation, just like email them every day until they unsubscribe, or go ahead with what you're proposing. So there is that school of thought. And I don't think this is a time really to be shy. You've put in some work. You've invested effort. So get your payoff. Either get an answer, yes or no. Closing isn't just converting people to pay. A close is to get an answer, yes, no, or not yet, something along those lines. And in our chases, rather than just chasing, because chasing is all about how it's going to benefit me, right? If you want to be nice about it, and if you want to have a better response, then as much as possible, make it about them. Include in your chases stuff that will be useful to them. Those things that could be useful to them would be tips on how to maximize the value of whatever it is that you're selling. Right. It could be how it's going to feel like when you first become a client, how to make the most out of it and get a quick start to it. Experiences of other clients, reminders of some of your social proofing, quotes from client testimonials, preferably clients that have been in a similar situation to the prospect that you're selling to. There's quite a few different things that you can do. And those different things that you can send to them, you might have a dozen of them. You've got plenty of opportunities to chase, but I would do it fairly regularly. You know, at the point where that you have sent a quote and they are in a position, hopefully, to buy, the worst that's going to happen is the person's going to say to you, listen, we are not going ahead at this point, okay, right now. Yeah, that's or we've gone somewhere else. That's the worst that's going to happen. If they were going to go somewhere else, they would go somewhere else anyway. You're probably not going to be putting them off by chasing them. All right. So the other worst thing that can happen is they'll say, listen, hold off, boy. You know, we're not ready to go ahead yet, which is a great thing for you to hear. It might be disappointing, but it gives you the opportunity to say to somebody, okay, that's cool. Just give me an idea as to when that might be, if you were to go ahead. Yeah. And then you can diarize that, which brings me to the first situation, which is how do you prevent this happening in the future? And you alluded it to yourself there with the qualification. The majority of the time, when I have clients that feel like they're chasing all the time, when I look in their pipeline, there'll be an empty box under the question, estimated close date. Yeah, that time when, if they were to go ahead, they would go ahead. And when we've talked about qualification a lot over the last year or so.
Yes.
But, you know, one of the key qualification criteria in almost all things that we're selling has to be estimated close date. Do you remember the other two? Anyway,
No.
we'll come to that in time. But so estimating, he was worried then I was putting him on the spot. We have talked about it quite a lot. And you do it anyway. I know you do. But estimated close date. If we were to go ahead, when do you think that might be? And that's part of your qualification. You want to be doing that before you start sending quotes.
I don't think it's too cheeky to do it as well. They've got to understand that you are running a business, looking after other clients as you're providing a service or doing work notionally for loads of other clients. You've got to fit everything together. You've got a diary to fill. So it's as good for them as it is for you to know up front. Plus, I think it's good common courtesy to understand that their level of interest and what's the word I'm looking for?
Urgency.
That's it. It will color everything. If they
Absolutely.
go, I'm not sure, that completely changes the conversation to, well, I think next week at 2:30 on a Wednesday is going to be right,
Yeah, or it might be, well, I'm just looking around at the moment, okay, well, if you were to go ahead at some point, when do you think that might be? Maybe this time next year. That's cool. Why don't I send you an estimate? You're probably talking in the region of, to help you plan. There'll be reasons why people, look for prices. That shouldn't necessarily trigger you to do some sort of full-blown proposal and get all excited about it.
Yeah.
But certainly in our qualification, we need to be asking the question. This is just one of many reasons why we'd ask this question. If you were to go ahead with us, when do you think that might be? Armed with that, then we can then time our quote, so we can deliver our quotes, still send the quote quickly, still do that follow-up. Can I just talk you through it? Just make sure you understand everything in there, because you've not received a quote from me before. And I format it in a particular way, schedule that 15-minute call. That 15-minute call itself might elicit a number of other questions, which you can then use as part of your sales process to be closing.
Right.
But if you know that you've done that, and then you know that they're going to be wanting to make a decision, I don't know, in 2 weeks, often there's a number of different activities that need to happen during those 2 weeks, whether it's checking terms and conditions, whether it's getting purchase order numbers sorted out, any of those sorts of things, whether it's a demo. They might say to you, well, before we go ahead, we want to follow up some references. So, you can start planning those things. And certainly the last stage of the traditional sort of sales process might be sort of stage 5 would be what we would call the plan. What are the different things that you and I are going to have to be doing in order for you to become a client? And it might not, one of those things will be signing a contract or pressing go or something like that. But there might be some other things as well. Checking with the boss, checking terms and conditions, following up on references.
Does this count? Because this is what I do. I give them an onboarding agenda. So I say, it looks like we're going to move ahead. and become clients. This is what these are the goals that we need to achieve. These are the waypoints along the way. So the first goal we're going to have to achieve is to achieve that. Then we're going to achieve that. Then we're going to have to achieve authorization for that. Then you'll sign the contract or agree to the terms legally. And at that point, we will start actual work for you on this date.
Yeah.
So those are the goals. The waypoints are you'll have signed the contract. That's the first major one, and the second one is you'll have given us authorization. Once you hit those two waypoints, we're committed. And then I also mention, by the way, we work on a whole calendar month's notice. So at that point, I'm telling them this is their expectation. So setting up expectations. I'm an autistic gentleman. For me, expectations are absolutely key. Otherwise, I have mini meltdowns. So what I have to say to them is as much for me as it is for them. I say, so our expectation is that once you hit the go button, at that point, the minimum amount of time you can be with us is 2 months, because it's the month we're in plus a whole calendar's month that you have to give. So that's your minimum expectations. Are we good with that? And I'll tell you what, I know it can be scary asking that question, because what you're effectively saying to them is, right now, even though I haven't signed anything, I'm committing to a process.
Yeah.
But it kind of like is the bottom end of that funnel, isn't it? It's that.
Yeah, absolutely is the bottom end of that funnel. Yeah, absolutely. And
you're taking them out of the possibility
although it can be,
and shoving them into the tube.
Although it can be nerve-wracking to ask, I can tell you that for people on the receiving end of that question, it can be reassuring. It adds a bit of pressure to them. However, it's a coaching kind of pressure.
But it provides a sensible and sane timeline. Yeah. And therefore, once they're in that process, it's fine from that point for you to phone up and say, like 2 days later, is there anything else I can provide you with before you step onto the next section? Are you ready for the next bit? I notice you've booked in the follow-up session there. I'm assuming that means you've read all the content they've given you. If there's any part of it that either doesn't make sense or you need further clarification, this is a good time to do this. You know,
absolutely.
You've given yourself license to be in further communication with them.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say, that every industry is slightly different, every company is slightly different. But if for example, for my services, which is consultancy and coaching, somebody was looking to start Wednesday the 17th of April, it's Wednesday the 10th of April today, then I know that there's a couple of different things that they would need to do. And I might even want to draw their attention to a particular clause in my terms and conditions, which are on my website, but I can draw their attention to that particular clause, which out of all of the clauses is the one where people might have a question. Right. You know, I want them to do their homework. And to your point about the onboarding, and again, we've talked about this before, but it's worth our viewers sort of looking up the job of a customer success manager. In fact, a very, very good friend of mine, Adam Joseph, is really the king of customer success. And it's all about what happens once somebody has signed a contract. There are some steps that you would take after that in order for them to become active users of your service or your product. So that they're already, getting the value out of it as soon as possible and as much value as possible. That sort of came from the software industry, really, where they are reliant on people renewing their contracts year on year in order to make a profit. If they don't renew, they don't make a profit. But a lot of people don't renew their software contracts because they never learn how to use it and untap the value in the first place. So those are the tips I would give. Do you want a summary? You like your summaries, don't you?
I love a summary. Summarize me, baby.
All right. So you send a quote. You want to be following up straight away, preferably scheduling that follow-up before you've sent the quote, just as you're about to set that quote. And that follow-up is to check that, not just to check that they've got it, but to make sure that they can understand what you said to them and that they can see exactly how you're going to untap the value and achieve their goal or overcome their problem. When do you chase? Little and often. Have a number of different chases. Don't just make it about where's my contract, make it about them. Deliver value in every chase. And we gave some examples of what sorts of value we can add at those points. Examples of customers that have been in a similar situation, all those sorts of things, pointing out the terms and conditions, that type of thing.
I send out a link to a video testimonial, because
a video testimonial, all of those sorts of things, just wonderful. But in order to avoid having to do all of that unnecessary chasing and worrying about when to chase, best thing to do is to fill in that box on your pipeline, that box that says, if you were to go ahead, when would that be? The estimated close date. Do that in advance and you'll have to chase less.
As ever, thank you so much, David, for brightening up all of our lives and giving us more reasons why this kind of stuff works. It just never works for him. And I want to wish everybody, go on, do the heart. Oh, finally, hooray. I want to wish everybody a successful rest of the week, of course. And of course, amazing mental health. Bye-bye all.